the stars at night. Yeah, right. And everyone stops in place and just goes, "Did you in the heart of Texas?" It is stupid, and it's so brilliant. It is brilliant.
Recently, it was in the past few weeks or a couple months, I found Sid Croft's Instagram, and he's pretty active on there himself.
Really? Cool.
And
you mean the gentleman that I falsely accused of being departed?
Yes, one of the two brothers who are still with us. So this scared me, and I'm sad to find out the truth of what he was actually talking about. But he posted a picture of himself walking alongside somebody who was taller than him, gray hair on the back, and all he said in the caption was, "I just lost my best friend today."
Oh.
And I thought, oh no, is it Marty? Did Marty die? Because I thought it was his brother. It looked like it might be his brother from the back. And I scrolled through the comments. All his fans knew exactly what he was talking about.
Mm.
They said, somebody said, Paul. Yeah, I love Paul. I'm so sad that you lost your buddy.
Yeah.
And so what is he talking about? So I had to go and find, and not long after that, I discovered that Paul Reubens had passed away.
Literally yesterday. And did you read his the message that he wrote, his Facebook message to his fans that he wrote right before he died?
Mm-mm.
Paul Reubens, a.k.a. Wee Herman, just, a huge part of, well, I'd say it doesn't even matter generationally because it's sort of eternal, but specifically our generation is where he was kind of coming up. I love that guy. But yeah, he wrote a Facebook post, which basically was like, "I'm sorry that I kept a secret from you guys about what I've been dealing with for 6 years. But, I was doing my best." And basically it was like, to all my fans, he goes, "Your love meant everything to me. And it was my greatest joy was sharing my art with you." Basically, that was it. It was just a goodbye, but it was tragic that it's like he kind of is like, yeah, I've got like how much longer I should write a message to my fans, because he passed away last night or yesterday from cancer that no one knew about. I guess his family, of course, and friends probably did know, but yeah, I love him. I all the way back to, where do you think, like, what was your first exposure to him? I think for me it was Letterman.
Oh, that's a good question. I knew about him before that movie came out. I'm trying to remember, because I had watched his show, but I can't remember. Maybe he was on Letterman a few times.
He was on Letterman actually quite a lot.
Yeah, but, I'm sure I must have seen him on there.
Around the same time he was doing his early late night with Dave Letterman appearances, HBO, which we would have and then not have. I mean, we had cable and like every now and then, but the Pee Wee Herman show, which was the live in quotes, but the video version of his Groundlings show, which is what established the character.
Yeah.
And is slightly more mature, slightly more for adults. They used to show it on HBO all the time.
That might be where I saw it.
I think I probably saw him on Letterman first, then realized, oh, he's got this thing on HBO that they would just show over and over and over again. And that, I mean, everything the man ever did was funny. I mean, even Big Top Pee-wee, which is considered a flop, there are moments in it that are hilarious because the man is funny. But the very first thing he did, the Pee Wee Herman show that established the character, he also co-wrote, and it co-stars Phil Hartman as Captain Carl. It kills me. That HBO thing, which of course is slightly more skewed towards adults, is great. But what was great about the Pee Wee Herman character was how it could be turned into a Saturday morning TV show with the exact same structure as his HBO adults only nightclub act, with just a couple of tweaks. Because they kept Jambi, the mystic head in the box guy, and they had Cowboy Curtis instead of Captain Carl, but they kept Miss Yvonne and all these characters from his original Groundlings cast, and it was like a wildly successful kids show on Saturday mornings. I loved Pee-wee's Playhouse. That guy was just brilliant, man, and every time he was on Letterman, it was always just... It was so great to watch Dave Letterman just sort of sit there. I mean, he's enjoying it, but it's not his thing. So he's like going, Okay, Pee Wee, what do you got there?
Right.
And it's like Pee Wee like bringing out. He literally just brought out weird toys. He goes, "Look at this, Dave." It's like, look at his legs, and it'd be like a little frog thing that's like, ha, ha, ha. And Dave's like going, "That's great, Pee Wee." I fucking loved it, and you know, also the stuff he would do outside of it. I mean, he's mainly known for Pee Wee, but I remember him as like this weird asylum guy from a Cheech and Chong movie that he keeps showing up going hamburger.
That's right.
And he's hilarious in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, the movie that kicked off the TV show. He's really the main reason to watch it, as this like vampiric sidekick who's really scary, but also has one of the funniest death scenes ever in a movie that goes on for like 7 minutes.
Oh, right.
He gets staked and he's like going, ah! He starts like kicking the wall, and the camera just keeps going. They're like, no, he's giving us gold. Let him go. It's so good. So
I wonder
Paul
how
Reubens,
much of that was improvised in the moment.
Oh no, I think it all was. I think
the director
they
had no idea how long it was going to go on.
Yeah, and was probably like, oh no, this is great. This is great. Let him go. So I mean, the man was a treasure, and yeah, it's tragic. It was something that popped up on my feed while I was talking to my mom, and I was looking at my iPad while I'm on the phone, and then a little news thing said Paul Reubens, Wee Herman dead, blah blah blah, and I knew better than to bring it up to my mom because she never thought that guy was funny, but it hit me really hard, and I was kind of like, oh, and I couldn't really say, Mom, this person passed, because she would have gone, good impression of my mom, by the way.
Finding out that Sid Croft and Paul Reubens were
I didn't even know that, but it makes perfect sense.
Right, apparently very close friends, was not surprising. But I've been thinking about this because you brought Uncle Croc's block to my attention several months ago, and we talked
Glad
about
I could help.
Talked about it on the previous episode. Watching that stuff, it occurred to me like obviously Paul Reubens as Pee Wee was inspired by the Croft brothers, but there's a lot of trappings from the Uncle Croc's format, that whole show with the different characters that keep coming in and out, and the different repeated themes. Like you've got the Cuckoo Knievel, this clock where this little bird on a motorcycle shoots out. And it's like, this is so Pee Wee Herman. Well,
basically, the whole thing is even Uncle Croc's block and what Pee Wee did. Because actually, Paul Reubens created Pee Wee in his improv classes at the Groundlings, but in the 70s. Like, again, we didn't become aware of Pee Wee Herman until much later, but he was doing the character for a long time. He was basically, just like Uncle Croc's block, they took the classic kid show format, which was Howdy Doody and Bozo the Clown, and they just amped it up and parodied it. So yeah, Uncle Croc is also a parody of like the 50s classic kid shows where there'd be puppets, marionettes talking to humans. They all had character names like Buffalo Bob, hey Buffalo Bob, and Clarabelle the Clown and all that stuff. And here comes was it Princess Minnehaha was the Indian princess, Native American princess that would show up on Howdy Doody and stuff. So, and they would introduce cartoons, and then they'd come back, they'd play a game with the kids in the audience, the peanut gallery and all that stuff. So I think it was literally just Paul Reubens was a kid then.
Yeah.
And then he gets to his 20s and 30s, and he's thinking in terms of like, what if I did this sort of chaotic, very subversive take on like a kid's show?
But I guess the reason why, I mean, obviously, it stems the influences stem back so far, but the complete wacky, just completely haphazard and insane aspect of Croc's block.
Yes.
It seemed way crazier than like Captain Kangaroo or
of course, it's
Howdy Doody and all those shows.
They were pumping it up, and it was also, of course, it's all just winky. It's making something that's recognizable for the adults who grew up with the early stuff, but also the kids and also the short attention spans. I mean, again, I highly recommend. I think it got it. I don't know if it got a DVD release, but the Pee Wee Herman show, which is not Pee Wee's Playhouse or the movies, the HBO thing. Yeah, man, it's just he structured it like one of those things. They even had like the PSA about like a little movie from the 50s about don't be don't be that guy, be this guy. Don't be the dirty kid, be this nice clean kid. And all it is Pee Wee going talking over it like it's MST3K, like, look at the size of that cake. You know, it's all this stuff. And so there's a movie segment and the whole thing with there's a moral and a message to the episode about Captain Carl doesn't want to admit his crush on Miss Yvonne and all this stuff, and it's just brilliant and again chaotic and Looney Tunes. And had he been doing that as a show like Uncle Croc's Block, when he did Pee Wee's Playhouse, same thing. He's like, we can do editing stuff that I couldn't do live. So, you know, they were also copying Laugh-In with, like I was mentioning, the cut-ins with, like, Jonathan Harris and stuff like that, where for no reason some guy walks in going, did you just see that?
Yeah, right.
What's that? So, I you know, my hat's off. Genius stuff.
Yeah. Do you remember? It's been a long time since I've seen Pee Wee's first movie. It was Big Adventure, right? Is that
Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Tim Burton.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but it was yeah, that's right. Tim Burton. I forgot that you directed it. I just recall it as being like it's a perfect movie. It was just such a great vehicle for his character to kind of expand out into this out into the world and get. Yes, it was like almost like it was kind of a fish out of water thing, but it was almost like the world was the fish out of water, like reacting to his reality. You know.
Well, even the reality outside of Pee Wee, once he has to go on a search for his bike. It's a hyper cartoony world.
It's true.
It's just he's even more cartoony.
Yeah.
So yes, it is a thing where he's still the oddball, but the world around him is a cartoon as well. And it all worked. It all worked. It's still like Airplane, a movie that I've seen 50 million times, and I still laugh. Even the lamest jokes in Pee Wee's Big Adventure are the best ever, and I'm laughing. The whole thing about literally the pet shop that's on fire. And by the way, it was a Warner Brothers film. So again, a lot of that backlot when he's running around and stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I used to eat lunch in front of that thing. But the pet shop that's on fire towards the end, and he runs in and he's pulling out puppies. He's pulling out the kittens.
Snakes,
and every time he runs in to get more animals, he runs by this tank full of snakes. He's like, and it's this running gag. If he looks at him, he's like, no thanks. But then he's gotten the birds out. He's gotten the hamsters. He's like, run. And then finally he runs out 2 handfuls of snakes and he just goes, and passes out.
Yeah, right.
And it's so stupid. And I love every second of it. That movie kills me. And it's another thing. Kids can laugh at Pee Wee's Big Adventure, and it's working on all these winky jokes for adults. Like at the very end when his movie premieres and he's visiting all the supporting characters. They've all come to the premiere, which is at a drive-in, which I think is funny. And then there's Rocco, the guy who broke out of prison, and he's in a prison truck and he goes, Rocco, I got you your snacks. He goes, 1 foot. He goes, 1 hot dog, foot long. And you're like going, oh. And then he goes, thanks, Pee Wee. And then a cop pulls this, file out of it. That's so the wink of the foot long. We're like, we get what you're getting at. But it was to hide a file. And the cop pulls it out. He goes, thanks anyway, Pee Wee.
My favorite. This is by far the silliest. I think one of the dumbest jokes that just works so well because of the way it's executed, and it's like a dad joke where he's near the Alamo, I think. He finds himself in Texas and he's on the phone with somebody. I can't remember who he's talking to. And they're like, "Are you sure you're in Texas, Pee Wee? Hey, let me say." The stars at night. And everybody turns around and does the clap. He's like,
it's people walking by. Yeah. And it's like, how do you know you're in Texas? He goes, I'll prove it to you. And then he just goes, the stars at night. Yeah, right. And everyone stops in place and just goes, did you in the heart of Texas? It is stupid. And it's brilliant. It is brilliant. Yeah, no, I love it. And that's something I'm probably I need to rewatch. I'll rewatch it tonight and just go, man, God bless you, Paul Reubens. I don't know
if I ever actually saw Big Top Pee Wee. I probably did, but I don't remember. So.
Sadly, Phil Hartman did not join him on the co-writing of that one, and I'm not saying that's why. Its premise is pretty thin, but then again, the first movie is about him getting his bike stolen and him getting his bike back. Yeah. But it's I remember that the biggest news about it when it was coming out, Entertainment Tonight did a whole piece about Pee-wee's Big Top Pee-wee had the world's longest on-screen kiss, and he had planned it that way because and so they broke a record, and it's him and the Italian actress who's very cute, and I can't remember her name, but he just thought it would be hilarious that Wee Herman would have the world's longest screen kiss, and it goes on for like 2.5 minutes, and the camera's just spinning around. He's just like, it's pretty dumb, but again, there are moments that crack me up. So, man. Anyway, and you also brought up Alan Arkin in our text. Talk about another comic legend that we lost pretty recently. And, dude, what can you say about Alan Arkin? This has become our RIP episode.
Yeah.
Alan Arkin was a gosh darn treasure, and I'm sorry for the language. You'll probably have to do one of your weird sound effects on that. But The In-Laws is one of the funniest films ever made. And he also just pretty much in everything he ever did, he had this thing he could do that no one else could. And it's this perfect deadpan. And it was a deadpan that was both, I'm frustrated, I'm bewildered, I'm angry, and it could say all of that without him actually making any expression whatsoever. I just love that guy. And every time he would his voice would raise, it was always the funniest thing. I remember The Russians Are Coming. That was one of the first things I ever saw him in.
I think I may have mentioned that to you when we were texting back when he actually passed, which was, I don't know, a month ago.
It was like a couple months ago, I think.
Yeah. The first thing that always comes to mind when I think of Alan Arkin is that movie, Russians Are Coming. Because my dad had gone to see that movie, when it came out. When was it, 66, 60, mid-60s or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was 67 or 68. Yeah, okay. Because I included it in my novella-length Scooby-Doo fan fiction, which takes place in the 60s, and I had the Scooby Gang watch that in the theater.
Well, and this is a story as it was told to me by my dad's widow, my stepmom Debbie, and my brother Preston, who was 7, 8 years old at the time. This was maybe less than a year before my dad passed away, but he suddenly something reminded him of that film, which he always loved. And this is back in 2004 to 2005 or something. And he just remembered that line. And my dad would do this, like there'd be certain lines that he would just be like exquisitely funny to him, and they would just stick with him, and he would just laugh to himself endlessly whenever anybody brought this up or it just occurred to him. And the line from this movie was when Alan Arkin is coaching the other Russians on how to speak to go undercover in this small town that they're stranded in, and because they have this plan to try to evacuate the street. Emergency, everybody to get from street. And he coaches them all to say it together. And my dad would just go around saying that line and just giggling. And so he forced, he had to go and run out to Blockbuster and rent this movie so he could show it to Debbie and my little brother.
It's hilarious. And it does pay off because later in the movie, they're in like one of those motorcycles with the sidecars, and Alan Arkin's got like a megaphone, and he's literally going, emergency, please to get from street. It's so dumb.
It is.
But Alan Arkin could sell anything, and he was such a good dramatic actor too. But the just what would kill me is everything, and of course, the reason In-Laws is so damn funny. It's got a great script, but it's Peter Falk and him, and the pair of them. Peter Falk being kind of the really insane guy, but at the same time trying to play cool, and Alan Arkin being the guy totally caught up in all the nonsense, and just looking at the guy like, my life depends on this guy. This guy's the guy that's going to save me. It was always great, and it just that's a pairing. Like later when you get Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, you're like, this is an unlikely pair, but they are great. The chemistry's great.
Oh God. Yeah.
So yeah, me and Robin, we worshipped Alan Arkin and In-Laws, and also, of course, we would quote the same thing from Russians Are Coming, because it is one of the big punchline lines in that movie. And there are things that Robin and I can just, like cue up from In-Laws that'll crack each other up. Like the whole thing with the crazy Latin American dictator who has the hand puppet. And he's like, what do you think of him? Oh, he's very handsome. Do you want to give him a kiss? Oh, yes, I want to kiss him. And he's just like, God damn it, that's hilarious. And there's the scene where where you got Peter Falk is lying about his experiences as part of like, Doctors Without Borders or something or whatever. And he's just doing the whole thing of like, let me tell you, Shell, break your heart. I was out there with the villagers, and they had these tsetse flies the size of eagles. And they would just come, swoop in, grab these little brown babies, and just take off with them. And you've got Alan Arkin, who's not buying it at all, but just looking at him going, size of eagles. Tsetse flies the size of eagles, you say? It's just so. He goes, I'm telling you, break your heart. That's terrible. It sounds terrible. It's so great. Anyway, so I've now put a referendum on any of my favorite people dying. It's just no longer allowed.
I mean, who would think after 2016 that this would still? You think everybody's already dead? We're done with it.
Surely everybody's already dead.
Yeah.
Jesus. Are there people in your personal list of gods that you will literally, it'll hit you like a truck if they pass? I bet I know one of them.
Oh, Paul McCartney or Ringo.
Yep.
At this point, I'm like,
yep.
God damn it. Because it's been ages. I mean, it's definitely still kind of fresh for me thinking about George Harrison.
Sure.
Because that happened when we were 30. John Lennon was when we were 10.
I
11 years old.
And I remember the newscast. I remember the newscast.
Me too.
Yeah, those are two that will, of course, hurt really badly. I was thinking the other day about Steve Martin. I mean, again, the guy seems very healthy, and Only Murders in the Building, the first 2 seasons, just unbelievably great. It's one of those things where you're happy to see someone that you respect do something really good again, instead of like, oh, it's another terrible movie that he took for the money. Instead, you're like, oh my God, him and Martin Short, they still have it and they're brilliant. But I sit there going, one of these days, I hate to say it, but we'll lose Steve Martin and that'll hurt me, man.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to something a little more cheerful.
Yeah. Let's talk about life and love and happiness.
Did you finish watching Secret Invasion?
I did.
How did you think? How did you feel about how it wound up?
Well, I don't agree with a lot of the people that say they really fucked up the ending. It was terrible. What I will say is it did feel a little rushed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a person who's ever going to complain that there's a throwdown between Super Skrulls. I just won't. You're not going to hear me going, well, I didn't want that in my spy adventure. I'm like, no, I want some Super Skrull action. I thought all the plot points worked out fine. I do think that after after an espionage thriller, that one episode where everything just gets solved with bing, bang, bang did feel abrupt.
Yeah.
So I think that they could have, if they had a couple more episodes and led to this, it would have felt better.
Yeah, unfortunately,
But
this seems to be.
I didn't hate it. I liked it just fine.
Yeah, I enjoyed it while I was watching it. The main thing that stuck out to me after I've watched, I've watched some other reviews later. I'm like, oh yeah, it's things that didn't occur to me in the moment. But the thing that really bugged me was a guy being left with not only the powers. I mean, we talk about Captain Marvel and the current MCU being tremendously overpowered. You could argue. Not only does she have her powers, she's got the powers of every other superhero that we've in the MCU, apparently, essentially at this point. And then she keeps the powers, and she's just out there with all these powers now. I'm like, this is way too much.
What I believe they will do now for the non-Marvel comics literate, and I envy you. No, the Super Skrull classically, he only had the powers of the Fantastic Four because they were the main baddies for the Skrulls. Humans, I mean, really, every hero or hero team has their, bad guys. Very rarely did Spider-Man fight the Skrulls. I'm sure he did. But the whole thing was the Skrulls really hated the Fantastic Four, so they created the only one, Super Skrull, and they gave him the ability to mimic the powers of the Fantastic Four. So he could stretch like Mr. Fantastic. He could turn into orange rocks like the Thing. He could set himself on fire like the Human Torch. He could become invisible. That's a lot of powers. He can only use one at a time. Sure, of course. But this is, like you said, way overpowered, where it was not only powers that they got from leftover alien races, because they had the Frost Giant, they had Groot. This is in the show, Secret Invasion. Then Nick Fury hands over, or actually Gaia does, the DNA of the entire Avengers, the ones who have powers.
Including the Guardians, yeah.
Including the Guardians. So that's crazy. But I'm sure they're going to work in a back door where it'll be basically like, yeah, you can't hold on to them for long. And it'll probably wear off. Then that will be somewhere down the future. Because they can't. I mean, I like me some Emilia Clarke. But I can't have her being like, I could destroy the planet just by breathing on it. It's a little too powerful.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they'll work something out like that. But it's all leading. That was another thing people did complain about. They're like, why did we even watch a series when all it is doing is setting stuff up? And I'm like, no, I thought it was a solid story on its own, but we're going to get, it'll spin off into Armor Wars, where Rhodey, we still don't know how long he was out of the picture.
And they clearly want us to be
asking that question.
Yeah, because they say, Agent Ross goes, oh, Agent Rhodes, or Colonel Rhodes, you've been in here a long time. You can't take it easy.
It's been a long time, and he's in a hospital gown, and you're thinking, was it when he, was the Skrull the guy that was getting trained by Tony Stark to use the? So
that's the big question. It's like, did we lose him, or did he get captured after his legs? In Civil War, where he got injured, which means
possibly when he went to the hospital.
Right, because he's in. That's what he say. It's the same hospital gown.
So he doesn't know anything about the blip.
The blip wasn't there when Tony died, which is the thing a lot of people are upset about. So that is upsetting, but it does depend on what they do with the story. If they they don't do anything with it, it'll be annoying. But
that could be annoying, and that would be a missed opportunity. Yes. But there's nothing wrong with it being upsetting, because Secret Invasion should have echoes. In other words, this all has consequences, and including, at the end of it, one of the gutsiest things they did in that last episode, I gotta say, was literally Fury did everything right by the world and being transparent, and then the president still goes, we have to kill all of these aliens. And he's like, that's not what I was getting at. And so it's got this, like, the Skrulls again are going to be prompted to fight for their lives, and it's going to lead to more violence. That's a good place to leave it. Marvels, it's also setting up Marvels. I love the whole thing at the end where he and his Skrull wife That's certainly not comics, but I love the fact he's got this Skrull wife. And he's like, I need you to help broker a peace agreement with the Kree. Kree Skrull peace agreement. That's so Marvel Comics. So it's hard for me to look at that series, which was well done, had some great acting bits all the way through it. Olivia Colman, all day long. I love Olivia Colman. Plus, she's kind of tied into a Marvel character. She's implied to be like the grand niece or something of Union Jack, who was one of the Howling Commandos. We never saw him as Union Jack, but we saw him in Captain America, the First Avenger, the British Howling Commando guy. He's a Farnsworth. He became Union Jack in the comics. And this woman, Olivia Colman plays, who's the head of MI6 or whatever their version of the spy organization is, she's a Farnsworth. She's related to the Howling Commando. This stuff I love, man. Okay, cool. It's just like, oh, crack.
Getting back to the Super Skrull, never get back to the Super Skrull. The Harvest Avengers powers that the guy I wound up with. There was some of the stuff. Number one, I'm not a really huge fan. I've never really been fond, even in comics, never been fond of this trope of people taking on other people's powers or losing their powers.
You hate Amazo. You can't stand Amazo.
Well, I mean, no, I some of it I like. Obviously, you've got Composite Superman, who has all the powers of the Legion of Superheroes. And for some reason, wears half of Batman's cowl.
And has green skin.
Just to piss off Batman and Superman and green skin. Anyway, but one of the when Olivia, I guess what's his name?
Drax. The little baby Drax arm. That Drax looks terrible.
It looked terrible, but also it's like, aren't those tattoos on his arm that got transferred via the TNA?
I don't think they're supposed to be tattoos. I think they're sort of because they're raised up.
I thought they were tribal tattoos that he had. So
well, since the movies have never bothered to explain if it's ink or it is something native to his people. If it's native to his people, you can let that one go.
Yeah.
But I will say the little tiny Drax arm was goofy as hell. It was why would it be scaled down?
Yeah.
Like the Super Skrull, one of the fun things is anytime he'd have the Thing's arm on his body, it didn't really match. It was literally drawn like the Thing's arm. Yeah. So it's this huge thing hanging off the side of the guy. Yeah. He's like, nope, it's the Thing's arm I've got. Boom.
What I thought would have been more clever, but probably not as fun. Because I know you say like Super Skrulls. I'm not going to say no to Super Skrulls. I know a lot. I think they did that for fans like you, where they wanted to give fans Super Skrulls.
Yes,
I think they went a little too far.
I agree. Where they gave everybody every power.
One thing I thought would have been really cool because they had it all set up, and there is kind of a switcheroo, obviously, because we find out it's not Nick, it's Gaia, and now she has the powers too.
Right.
So that was the big trick, but. I was. What if they did like a Superman 2 where she reverses the effect, so he loses all his powers and maybe even loses his Skrull ability to shapeshift. So he's just like, fuck, he's rendered completely powerless.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Be less exciting ending, but I think it would be more clever.
Or it could have been something like, not only are you getting their strengths, you're getting their weaknesses, and it would have been cool if, like for instance, the Extremist thing, which came out of Iron Man 3, like that had a tendency to burn you up from the inside. Like it did heal you, but there was also like it had a negative. What if the combination of those things, like, he's using Carol Danvers' powers at the same time Extremis is in him and he blows up.
Yeah.
I would have been okay with something like that. And also, I don't like him being dead because she's good and she's a good Super Skrull. I always like there being only one and him being a bad guy. So, I mean, I like Emilia Clarke. I like her being a heroic Skrull, but her being the Super Skrull and being on the side of good, unless she decides to become another rebel leader because the Skrulls are being hunted. I mean, I guess that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do. Kevin Feige hasn't called me in a long time and hasn't gone over his plans. Did you see the trailer for Loki season 2 that just dropped?
Yeah, I'm very, very excited for that show.
I am too. The Jonathan Majors thing, man.
I know.
But still, I'm excited and I feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
What
we've
can you
got
do?
our friend how do I pronounce his name? Kiwon Kwan, is that his name?
I think
Short
it's
round?
Ki Kwan. Yeah,
Ki
I could be
Kwan.
wrong.
But I love him. The addition of him is great.
Yeah,
More time variance authority, him bouncing through time. I'm just down for all of it.
yeah,
And basically him going like, we got to fight this guy. Marvel, I'm sure they've got to figure out what to do, but they've already started the train rolling towards this whole Kang dynasty thing, because Kang is the big bad of this next wave, and I can't wait. Now, if they have to replace the actor, that will be sad. At the same time, the character of Kang and the way they've established him, he's the new threat. I'm all about it. Thanos threatened reality and life, and Kang threatens all of time. And I'm like, these are big, good threats. And I can't wait to see new Avengers go after Kang.
What of all talking about Loki and Secret Invasion, all the Disney Plus Marvel
I hate
shows.
people taking the Schadenfreude. By the way, the critics and John has pointed this out a lot. It's been a few years now, pretty much post Endgame. Everything that Marvel does, you just have critics. You just get critics lined up going, they're finally failing.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, they don't have a plan. All this stuff is shit. And I'm sitting there going, look, it's not all genius, but I've enjoyed every single one of them.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, but Quantumania gets shit on. I'm like, I enjoyed Quantumania. It's not a life changer, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Eternals. That's the one I'll fight on a hill for, because I thought, damn, that's a beautiful looking superhero movie. What the hell is your problem, people?
I know. Yeah, people are going way too far with this one.
She-Hulk is very uneven, but generally, I enjoyed She-Hulk.
Oh, and all the show, this is what I was getting to, is like quite a few of these series, including the Star Wars series too. That's a whole other show.
That's a whole other show, man.
Whole other franchise. But
I still can't wait for Ahsoka, I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah. But there does seem to be, you mentioned the last episode of Secret Invasion seemed kind of rushed. That's been the case for a lot of these shows.
That has been
Falcon and Winter Soldier and what was the other one? Even WandaVision, was like
WandaVision
all the way to the last episode. They're like,
then just a magic fight in the sky, but that was very compromised to, by the pandemic. That was the pandemic. So I don't think that was their plan.
So it's just I'm just wondering why do they keep saying, okay, and we're done with a lot of these shows?
I'll tell you why. Because story-wise, they string it along, and the episodes will be great. But it's a comic book property. So there's an expectation built in that there will have to be some hero versus villain fight. And the problem is you can't split a fight between two episodes. I mean, you can, but it doesn't have the momentum. So what they're hoping for is that they'll have built up momentum episode to episode. So you're just sitting there waiting for now the big fight's going to happen. And very often at the end of half an hour, you're like, was that it? I think they're slightly slave to the tropes and slave to that structure. But even then, usually the writing and acting is so good that, okay, the fight wasn't amazing, but they'll cap it very well. Like She-Hulk, the ending where it gets totally meta and she talks to Kevin, the AI bot. That's very funny. And I enjoyed it. I was still sitting there going like, I guess that's the way you could do it. But we are left with like, okay, so Hulk shows up. This is my son Scar, and she's all canoodling with Matt Murdock, and I'm like, I like all that, but where are we going?
This is where I find like I was criticizing Kevin Smith for having unrealistically specific expectations for Indy 5.
Dude, he wanted a rolling boulder.
Yeah, he wanted what he wanted, and that he didn't get what he wanted, so he was really upset.
He whined like a little bitch.
So I think in a part, and now we've all been guilty as comic book fans, as fans of all these characters, we've all made that mistake, that error in the past for sure. I did it with Star Wars, everybody did it with Last Jedi. Although sometimes I think sometimes expectations are reasonable, sometimes they're not. I think with She-Hulk, it was kind of that thing. It was like, well, we know she gets very meta and she's very, breaking the third wall.
That's
kind of thing.
From the comics.
Breaking the fourth wall. She's very out, very, very, what's the other character?
Deadpool.
Very Deadpoolish, yeah.
She's aware she's in the comic. Well, not all the time, depending on the writer, but it is intrinsic. She's done it before.
Yeah. So a lot of people knew they were probably going to be doing that. But the thing that was frustrating for me in that was like seeing the possibilities of all these characters. And they're just not, the writers weren't interested.
Well, it takes away a lot of
cool.
Yes, it takes away a lot of the stakes if literally she can go, really, is this the best you guys can do? And then they go, oh, we're just kidding. So it's like, were there stakes? Right. Was there actually any? Because Titania, and I thought they cast her well, but Titania is a fearsome villain. And then for the sake of the She-Hulk show, which is a comedy, and I don't mind a sitcom in the Marvel Universe, and they turn her into a joke, and I'm like, okay, and there's really never a confrontation. And then, the Hulk shows up and or they get hulked out and it's a gamma fiend versus gamma person fight. And then it's just like, hold on, is this really the best you can do? And at that point you're going, I kind of wanted to watch. Hello.
Yeah. I was enjoying the story that you were telling before.
Like, no, instead I'm going to go talk to the man in charge and go talk to the AI.
Yeah.
That it basically does take away any kind of weight.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, anytime she wants, she could just go, Thanos, really? Snapping his fingers? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, no, she should be afraid for her life and she should be fighting alongside her cousin, and it should be awesome.
Because I did really like the way they did it in the very first couple of episodes where she's training with Bruce.
Yeah.
And she talks to the camera for the first time.
Yes.
And he goes, what? Like he hears her. And she's like, I love that because then you can kind of play with that. Like
for a long time.
Are we in her head? Is it kind of like Miss Marvel where we're seeing her imagination?
Right. Exactly.
Being played out.
And I thought they would keep it that way. And then it really did go over the top, basically, with her going like, oh, you're just lucky there isn't a commercial break right here. I'm in a TV show.
Yeah. They turn her into like Pee-wee. She-wee Hulky. She-wee Hulkwoman.
Yeah, She-wee Hulkwoman.
It was very.
I see a new T-shirt design coming up. She-wee Hulkwoman.
That might be the title of this episode.
Yeah, today's secret word is She-wee Hulkwoman. Ah!
Yeah, maybe we can use this to wrap up.
Okay.
The show.
All right, I'm ready.
I mentioned Superman 2 earlier, and how the end of Secret Invasion kind of reminded me of that scene.
Yeah. Also, when Nick Fury pulls off that cellophane S off his coat and throws it at the Super Skrull, I was like,
that
what?
was very evocative.
Very evocative. It felt familiar somehow.
that Superman 2 is like one of those movies where I love it, but I'm conflicted because I know so much about the backstory. That was supposed to have been Donner's film. And then we get Donner's cut, and it's actually not as good as what we got in a way. You and I debated this like a while ago. Like, some of the things that Donner wanted to do.
It suffers from the fact that they couldn't finish it.
Right.
But we see the structure that would have been Donner's cut, and I do think the structure works.
I remember you had an issue with when you and I were talking about this. I think around the time that the Donner cut was coming out, and I always mentioned the fact that they were using the test footage or his audition footage.
Yeah,
I guess it was test footage of the thing where she shoots him with a blank and he doesn't realize it's a blank.
Yeah,
and you had a problem with. There's no way Superman wouldn't have known that she was firing blanks. Yeah, and I kind of get that too.
But that happens in comics too. There's in order to make Superman, vulnerable in any way, he cannot be omniscient. Yet he does have the power to do that. Like he would have easily, if Lois pulled a gun on him, and the man can move at super speed. That means to him it's not even a surprise. It would probably look like it's happening in slow motion. And he would have plenty of time to use his X-ray vision and see that it's a blank.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bunch of different ways that you could have written Superman playing along, knowing that it's that. But yeah, for the sake of the drama, the sake of the scene, he's just stupid in that scene.
And I think one of the reasons why I do like the way it plays out better in the actual film.
Yeah.
Because I think it was just, that was a test scene. They weren't really making the movie, and they knew it at that point. So the characters aren't really giving their all. When we have the really, admittedly, very goofy thing of him accidentally or tripping into the fireplace in the hotel room, like, oops!
Oops. All of Clark Kent's clumsiness is purposeful. So that wasn't really Superman tripping.
Right.
So
they kind of allude to that. So did you think maybe you did that on purpose? No?
Yeah.
Maybe
I think he has to. Come on.
But both he and
Margot Kidder.
God damn, I'm so bad with names.
No, it's all right. We're getting old, and this happens all the time.
They're both so great in that scene, and that his where he finally he does that big deep exhale, and he says, "Okay, here we go," and he takes his glasses off. It's just so good,
dude.
So
see, the thing is,
the silliness
even when
just evaporates when
very often they're saved, and this goes for non-superhero things. Very often something that's written not so brilliantly, or the direction's bad, or the editing, it can be saved. I've seen this happen in so many movies where it's like, thank God those actors, they're aware this won't work unless I play it this way. Mm-hmm. And then you go, they win you over. Now afterwards, it's like, the next day you're like, oh, wait a minute. But they're so good that in the moment you get swept up, and all you care about is their emotional connection, and it has nothing to do with the plot mechanics. It's like, that was just what the writers had to put in there to get to this moment that you want. So it's like, you're not going to question it too much. Afterwards, you'll go, wait
a minute.
But in the moment, you're just going like, this is what I emotionally wanted, and they're giving it to me.
Yeah.
So audiences can be forgiving, and I have forgiven lots of badly written or badly directed movies.
Yeah, because both of those Superman movies, which in my mind still have not been topped. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to James Gunn's movie, but I'm like, he that's one of his favorite movies. He places it very high on his echelon of favorite films.
It's, I mean, again, despite we've talked about our nitpicks, and but Superman the movie, as far as encapsulating a character, it just hasn't been topped.
It's incredible, but it does have its faults, even
of course.
You've got the crazy Deus Ex Machina thing that happens at the end where he turns back time. All kinds of problems with that. But again, his performance stuff sells it. Yeah.
Yes, his performance sells it. Dude, there is nothing that rattles me to this day. Now, granted, I'm 8 years old the first time I see it, so this goes deep. But nothing rattles me like the whole death of Lois scene and his emotional reaction. And they're like, no. And then just flying, because you see an invulnerable human, and not even human, an invulnerable Kryptonian. You see this godlike being, and he's torn apart here because he's as vulnerable as any of us. So the important thing with Superman, which I'm sure James Gunn knows, is that unlike what Snyder's view was, you have to show the man is fragile. And it's a constant state of control he has to go through to be able to shake someone's hand without crushing it, to hold someone, or any of that stuff is a constant lessening of himself. And where it really counts, he is as fragile as any of us. The death of his father, the death of his mom later on, and then the death of Lois in that moment. This man reacts, and he has to be human. Otherwise, what is the point of a Clark Kent disguise? Why isn't he just walking through town in a Kryptonian king's outfit going, kneel before me. Yes, I am your king. Kal-El. Hello. And for some reason, he has a British accent at that point.
That is one thing in the Donner cut, too, where we get, which is cool. We actually get to see Marlon Brando as we're supposed to. And there's that scene where he has to he's explaining to Kal-El why he has to keep being Clark Kent. And it's just weird to me that he has to, but why? It's like, no, you have to I forget what the reasoning is, but you have to live among humans to understand them or something like that.
Yeah. And also he's basically saying like, look, the L family, we're not tyrants. He's like, even if you think it would be better for them if you just stepped in and took control, that is not how we do things.
Yeah.
Man,
I just thought it was bizarre that he would need to be convinced to keep
it
being
is
Clark,
true.
because it is such a big part of who he was.
It's like, well, I'm like 30 now, and
yeah,
I mean, it'd be better if I just like told him what to do, right? No, my son. No, my son. Don't do that. Here on Krypton, we don't do shit like that.
Didn't you? I kind of remember you saying too that you were not so fond, even though it's one of these things where we just roll with it because of the execution and the performances. But the whole thing with him having to give up his powers in order to have a relationship.
Yeah,
that was
that's just movie jibber jabber. Yeah, and I understood it. I mean, I understand why they created that, but at the same time. And it also, of course, is like how far he's willing to go because he loves this woman. That is nice. But, he should be able to get it on as Superman. That's all I'm saying. He should be able to get it on.
Yeah. I mean, Lois and Clark. Superman and Lois just went there and didn't. They do. That's one very, very briefly. I've kind of stopped watching the show, even though my mom tells me this latest season is actually pretty good.
I saw that one scene of their Luthor showing up at the farm as just a clip, and I like that actor. I don't know what the modern take is. Why every time we see Luthor and the modern stuff, he's got a beard. Why is Luthor always bearded now? But it was a pretty good scene with him basically going like, he basically walks out of prison when he's freed and he walks to Smallville. Like for days and weeks, he walks to Smallville, goes up to the farm and is like, I'm going to make you pay, Lois, because it's because of you that I was in prison.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't seen this.
And it's pretty effective. And you've got Clark standing next to her like going, hold on, buddy. And he's like going, just want to let you know it's going to happen and you won't expect it. It's going to be horrible. It's like, wow. Okay.
Well, and the thing I was going to say is that in the first season, it's one of the things they do. There's a lot of problems I have with the first few seasons of that show. The writers just get distracted by a lot of stupid tropes that didn't need to be there. But what they do well is, because we've never really seen this. I know. What they do execute well is because we've never seen it in live action before, really, is Superman being a dad. And you get to see, by way of him explaining to Jordan, his son, who winds up to have powers, the challenges of dealing with these powers, like, because they find out, both of his sons find out that wait, he's Superman, so he can hear everything. So wait, you can always hear and you know what we're doing all the time. And Clark's like, well, yeah, but it's cool, It's like, no, that's totally not cool.
Also,
they talk about the challenges.
Filters things. Yes.
Yeah. They get into that, like the challenge of filtering out your super hearing, of dealing with your super strength. And it's just constant sort of Zen effort that he has to do in order to
one of the things I really wish, and that is something that is worth exploring. And it's something that I'm very sad that Smallville did not do. Smallville could have been a teen drama with young Clark Kent learning about his powers. He did not need to fight people ever in Smallville. They didn't need to create villains. They could have literally made it the school years of Clark Kent. And yes, maybe in one episode he's like, how far can I fly? And he ends up in, Uruguay or something. He's like, oh my God. And then he goes back home. The whole thing is they decided it had to be superhero-esque and have like kryptonite infused villains every week. Yeah. And it would have been so much better if it had just been Dawson's Creek with a guy who has to conceal the fact he can hear the girl he likes say that she doesn't care for him or whatever, just living with these powers and trying to cope while his parents are also trying to help him. That's what it could have been. And I would have loved it a lot more. It's like, okay, now it's a guy like, kryptonite has made me so angry and I'm strong. You're like, great.
Yeah, that freak of the week thing that Smallville did, unfortunately,
Big mistake. Big mistake.
Unfortunately, Superman and Lois started doing the same thing in their first, and I was like, why? We're in small. It's bad enough that we're back in Smallville again anyway, but you're doing the kryptonite infused superpowered humans, and then
now
also they're using
Doomsday.
They were using the I forget it's taken from the comics as a Kryptonian device. But they use it to give humans Kryptonian powers, basically turn them into Kryptonians.
Oh.
And so there's a whole army of...
Well, there is a kryptonite in the comics that is the reverse that gives humans Kryptonian powers. But I know it's not a device. I can't remember what color of kryptonite. There's a million colors of kryptonite.
Yeah. I just hate that. This is that trope. I just don't... I'm not fond of...
Plus, I would rather that Superman is living on a meta planet where people occasionally get powers and it has nothing to do with Krypton. It's like, I would much rather he's living in a comic book universe where over there is the Flash who got struck by lightning that went through chemicals. It's like, that's what I like. It shouldn't just be, Krypton. Man, this world would be just as bland as ours if it weren't for Krypton blowing up.
Right,
it's like, I want all those people. I want reincarnated Egyptian, pharaohs that come back with wings and it fly around with a mace. That's what I want. You made me angry again. Thanks, Chad. Thanks.
That's one of the reasons why I love the first Iron Man so much, the beginning of it anyway, where he takes matters into his own hands and he's going up against real world terrorists instead of other supervillains or whatever. Yeah. And I just love that he just goes, fuck it. He just flies all the way across the globe to go take care of this problem on his own. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think made that first movie so great.
I mean, we do end up with Ironmonger at the end, but at the same time, it's still connected to the main storyline, and it's still an unpowered guy in a big metal suit.
Well, that's the only thing about that movie I'm not super crazy about. I don't really.
Come on! You get Jeff Bridges shouting in the power.
Yeah, I love it. He's great in it, but I just like it when superheroes go up against real world stuff.
I like that too. And especially with Iron Man, which didn't know it was kicking off a whole thing. It was basically like, fine, you want me to use my tech, and I'll show you what it can do. And don't mess with friends of mine. You killed my scientist buddy, and now you're trying to destroy his hometown. No, I'm just going to fly over there and shoot missiles at you.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Yeah. But I guess there's only so many times you can do that too. Because that was the first time we got to see him using a lot of his tricks for the first time.
Yes.
But still great.
It's still great. It's still probably just a near perfect origin movie.
Yeah, I agree.
The end.
I think it's my favorite origin story, and I think I mentioned that before.
Yeah, you did. I
think it is the best one.
It's really, really good, especially because we said the same thing before. Just the way that they made it relevant and modernized it, and you couldn't pick a better hero because you have to start with a smart guy who makes tech. That's real world to us. Then you can go on to a Norse god. Then you can go on to gamma radiated dude. But you start. I mean, obviously, that's not how the Marvel Universe started in the comics, but as far as a cinematic series, we feel familiar, but there's a dude in armor that can fly and shoot missiles and repulsor rays. Great. Now I'm ready. Bring on the big green guy. Yeah. Bring on a dude with a really tough, garbage can lid, who's slightly stronger and faster than us and dresses in a flag. And I'm down for all that shit. They could have started with Captain America, the First Avenger, and I would have been absolutely ecstatic.
That was another good origin story.
Oh, man. Sure. Because you know what? And Feige tends to be good at it, even though people do rankle at the kind of, quality control they do there, the demands they make of the creatives. But they found the right people, and they found the right tone. It's like these movies don't have to all be the same.
Yeah.
Are there little jokes in Captain America First Avenger? Yes. And they land really well. But the whole movie feels completely different than Iron Man because they're going for a 40s kind of idealism. And they play it slightly pulpy, which is perfect. It's a little cheesier, but so is Cap. It's like, yeah, that's the kind of movie he should have.
Yeah.
The Hulk, actually, the Incredible Hulk is, I really like it too. I mean, I think the effects are what sink it, but I thought that's how you do a Hulk story in progress, because it's not the origin film, but you're seeing what you want from a Hulk story, which is this poor, tortured guy trying to protect everybody and basically hating himself because of what he's become, yet every now and then is forced to use the monster inside. Great.
It's also such
Edward Norton was very good.
Yeah. He's like it's such a great, there's, homage, it's almost sort of understated homage to the Bill Bixby series.
Well, the whole origin sequence is just over the credits, and it's done in these like little bitty short pieces that make it look like it could be connected to even the Eric Bana film or the Bill Bixby TV series or the comic. It's like it could be all of them, except for there is no running out into the desert to stop a kid who's playing a harmonica, trying to save a kid from a bomb blast. That's never been in the live action. That's a shame. Rick Jones really got shafted in the MCU. But anyway, but yeah, they have the whole thing where he's in the that weird chair and the target light on his forehead, just like Bill Bixby. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can watch that again. It's been a while. Didn't they actually use some of the Lonely Man theme from
yes,
from the show?
Yes.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
And of course it's got guest appearances from Stan and Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah.
Both of whom, I think it's hilarious. They're both security guards at the same campus building. And I love the idea of an 80 some odd year old campus guard and this huge dude, and they're partners. I'm going to stay here. I'll go check this out. It's like, but it's pretty good. Highly recommended. Hey, guys, this is where you come for the really good recommendations. We here at PSAPs recommend you watch the MCU. You may not have heard of this, but there are a lot of good superhero projects they have made. Anyway,
yes. Okay.
Let's wrap up. And again, you stay cool, man.
I'll try.
Down there in Texas, cooking eggs on the sidewalk. What have I told you about doing that? I told you not to.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So bye, everybody. Bye, Chad.
Bye, Brendan. We'll see you again soon. Okay. Hamburger.